Hey, good to see you for a Sunday morning coffee chat.
Great to see you, Allison. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Gerald, I'm super excited to have a face-to-face conversation with you. I mean, as much as we can in a global pandemic anyway, but I wanted to have this conversation because you made a comment on a LinkedIn post that I made and it really stuck with me. And it surprised me, actually. Um, we've known each other since 1994,
Yes.
which is crazy. So over 25 years, we were basically kids when we
Yeah.
met. And this
Yes.
this comment struck me because, well, I'm gonna kind of pull back just a little bit because just in case anyone has the opportunity to listen to our conversation, I want to set the stage just a bit. Because this conversation came out of, or came in the wake of George Floyd's horrific murder at the hands of the police. And we're finally starting to have some much needed dialogue in our country about race and what that means. And so I posted a letter written by a professional Black man named Vernon Roberts. I posted this on LinkedIn about his experience being the only person of color in the room at the table, however you want to say that. And he talked about the armor he wears and has worn his entire life. So your comment on the post, when you shared that you identified with wearing the armor yourself, that's what struck me, because in over 25 years of knowing you, I had no idea that you wear this armor.
Exactly.
I had no idea. And so it got me thinking, am many of us missing something really important? Um, I've been ignorant, not knowing what I don't know. Can you tell me about the armor?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, my armor has been essentially a mask that I've been wearing, I want to say all my life. And it has been something that I have been essentially um, hiding behind. And it's been a persona that I've been pretending to be. And this is something that's really new that is now in my awareness that I just never had recognized before. And I can pinpoint the moment that it happened, but I didn't realize all of the decisions that I had made about myself and about who I am and about who I intend to be. I never put that all together for myself until really, a few months before these conversations, really distinguishing who is my true self and who is the persona that I'm trying to be. So for me and my experience, what happened with me was back when I was in kindergarten, living in Ridgefield, Connecticut. It's a almost 100% white community in Fairfield County, Connecticut. Very affluent, uh, and it's a suburb of New York City.
Mhm.
Growing up there, I was a kindergartner, and I was, as far as I can remember, I was the only Black
Mhm.
child in school.
Yeah.
So at this little elementary school in Ridgefield, Connecticut. So one day early in the year, I remember being on the bus, and these two little girls were also on the bus with me, and they called me Blackie.
Mm.
And I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know I didn't know how I should react or feel, but I knew that it didn't feel good. So
Yeah.
I went home, and my mother must have, drug out, Gerald, what happened, today
Yeah.
at school. And, I told her what happened. She proceeded to go to the principal and tell the principal what happened. And then the principal, I distinctly remember this, the principal came onto the school bus and told those two little girls to never call me Blackie again. And then then that was the end of it. Okay. No one ever, made any sort of racial comments to me, on the school bus or at school at any other time.
For your
So,
entire school career,
um,
elementary, middle school, high school?
no, other kids. I had gone to different schools. We had moved around a little bit in town, and I had gone to different elementary schools. There had been some other um, name. I wouldn't say name calling, because that's not what it was, but it was. I guess me tolerating racial jokes
Yeah.
against blacks, Jews, whatever the case, may be. And
Right.
I remember that. I remember that kid on the school bus, telling those jokes,
Right.
and it was always told with the context of, I'm talking about them. I'm not talking about you, Gerald. So this
Oh,
no
wow.
no offense to you, okay? Those famous words. No offense,
Right.
but I'm talking about these other people over here. But going back to that story about the girls on the school bus in kindergarten, it was at that time that I made a decision that I was going to be just like everybody else in school. I was going to do my best to fit in,
Yeah.
and I was going to do my best to be the best little black boy that ever lived. So, and I had this ideal in my mind of what that was. But of course, that's a ridiculous and unattainable goal.
Right.
But nonetheless, that is, something that I carried with me for my entire life. So it shaped the way that I talked. It shaped the way that I walked. It shaped the way that I held myself. It shaped the way all the different activities that I participated in. It really, shaped my whole life.
Yeah.
And just like you said, you and I have been friends for over 25 years. We met here in Boulder, Colorado. This is a
Yeah.
community that I chose to move to because of, again, my values, all of the, the sports and activities that I love to participate in. This is really a mecca for all that. But again, that's all with that context of this mask that I'm wearing and this person that I'm pretending to be each and every day. So it's wearing that armor each and every day. And it's a matter of again, very, very recently being able to distinguish between that persona who I'm pretending to be and who is the true Gerald.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of what the difference is at this point? Who's the true Gerald and who's the Gerald behind the mask?
Sure, sure. So I do a lot of work on the phone
Hmm.
right now, and that's really for me the most blatant area, and the area um, uh, where I really hide the best. So,
Uh,
when you talk to me on the phone, if you have your eyes closed, you can't tell whether or not I'm black or white.
true.
So, and and I've always been complimented for having a really good phone voice. So,
Yeah.
again, that is very purposeful, and it has taken me years of practice to be able to hone that very flat um, or non-existent accent, whether, and it's not a New York accent, it's not a, African American accent, it's very, very flat. And that's taken me years and years of practice to perfect. And it's one of the ways that I'm able to hide behind that armor.
So interesting. Of course, being in the work that I am, I'm so fascinated by, the communication piece of this
Mm-hmm.
and your effort in, the way that you communicate. And this goes back to that LinkedIn comment that you made, with I've worn my armor my entire life. Just like Vernon, I wore my Izod, Lacoste shirts as a boy,
Yes.
a
Yes.
suit when I worked in sales, all as an attempt to prove that they're meeting the best Black person. And you
Yes.
said that earlier, that pivotal moment on the school bus. The other thing that you said, and this is what ties back, and it's also that you could protect yourself with your dress and with your speech, right? So against any kind of perceived assessment or perceived judgment by the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is really interesting to me, that real focus on, I am going to shift the way that I speak and put so much effort and intention into that. And my assumption is that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, my assumption is I'm going to really focus on the way that I speak, so that no one knows that, or that I don't sound Black, or
Yes.
that I'm not
Yes.
perceived as Black.
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
interesting to me, because it sounds, from a third party, like you do have some sort of third party gaze on yourself when you communicate.
Yes. And certainly now I do. And that has been something that I also carry a great deal of shame
Mm,
around, because that third party judgment is not only judgment about myself and how I'm portraying myself, who I'm pretending to be, but more importantly, it's shame around what I think about other Black people.
mm,
And it's the shame that I carry because I was embarrassed about all other Black people, um, family members, the people that were in jail, the statistics of Black males being in the prison system is just, you know, incredibly astronomical in
yeah.
comparison to all other races. And I never wanted to be that Black man. And um and 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 I was ashamed of those other Black people, and it really was really very difficult for me to feel a sense of pride in being Black, in other Black figures who have made such huge contributions to society as a whole,
Yeah.
to even my own family members. My great uncle, he was a Tuskegee Airman. He fought in World War II,
Yeah.
and he was really at the forefront of this civil rights movement. And it's what's really interesting is that he, as a Black man, he could pass for white, so meaning that he was very fair skinned, he had
Mm,
very Caucasian facial features, but he was always very adamant about being African American.
yeah.
And he never let anybody make that mistake that he wasn't African American. yet at the same time, here I was having all this shame against all Black people and doing my best to not only be the best Black person, but to fit in um, as much as I can to to white society,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to be that. So
Yeah. And it sounds like there was an awareness at one point, maybe relatively recently, that you have some shame around having that mindset in the past.
yes, yes, and it took me a long time. It wasn't until I got into my mid to late 20s where I was really uh, comfortable about being proud, proud Black American, um,
Mhm.
a proud Black man, and it took me a long time to be able to get to that point. Again, a lot longer than I felt like I should have, and I feel like I should have been proud of not only myself, not only my family members, but all the other Black people that have contributed to society. And it's only been recently that I've had that focus of awareness, um, of that of that um, of that distinction between who am I pretending to be and who is the real Gerald.
Yeah. It's, it's interesting because you said quite a bit earlier that being Black really shaped the decisions that you
Mm-hmm,
made in your life. And I'm
mm-hmm.
curious about what that looked like professionally for you. Did you make specific decisions about, what you studied in school or what you chose as a career path, as a
Absolutely.
result?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, growing up in Ridgefield, Connecticut, my role models, all my dad's friends, all my father's friends, they were all doctors, lawyers,
Yeah.
corporate executives. So those were really the only career paths that I saw for myself. So I never imagined that I could be anything else but those very specific things. My mother had gone to law school while I was in my adolescence. So I got to watch and witness that whole process firsthand. So I knew that I knew that those were my choices. Um, so I went to private school. I went to private college. And I was all set to study economics so that I could, get out of school and I could work on Wall Street. I
Yeah.
knew that that was what I wanted to do. But again, that was all fitting in with the things that I should do. This is
Yeah.
all fitting in with everybody else's dreams. That wasn't
Yeah.
really truly my dream. And when I got into my sophomore year in college, my economics professor, I'm going to him every week for extra help and trying to improve and get better, but I just wasn't getting it. And
Yeah.
he turned to me and said, Gerald, maybe this isn't your path. Maybe you're not that good at economics. Maybe you should consider something else. So, and I was completely devastated because, I had, focused my whole life, towards doing this. So I ended up picking another career. I ended up picking exercise physiology, and that's how you and I met,
Yes.
from working together at the Pulse and being personal trainers together. And it was a fantastic career for me for almost a decade. Um, but one of my true passions has always been cooking, and it took me that decade to really give myself permission to
Mm.
go to culinary school, to be able to pursue a career in the culinary arts, because I felt like that was something that I shouldn't be doing. That's not a doctor, that's not a lawyer, that's not a corporate executive. That's way beneath that.
Yeah.
And it, like I said, it took me almost a decade to give myself permission to go ahead and make that leap into that career path. So
So I'm assuming as you're in private school, as you're in college in an economics, uh, major, and then you're shifting into, your career after that, there's still that unique experience of I'm the only person of color. I mean, you're in Boulder,
yep,
and
yep,
1994, in the environment that we were working in,
hmm
I don't recall that well, I know there were no other Black employees. I
nope,
don't recall another Black member of the facility
yep,
um, until several years later. There was a Black employee, and he made jokes about, if someone said, "Have we met before?" He'd said, "No, that's the other one in Boulder."
exactly, exactly.
So something that occurred to me, when we've been talking, is this idea of being white while wearing Black skin. What is that? I mean, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, yeah, it does, but it's something that you may not be able to see on the surface, because it's typically it's typically a slur, or a something that other Black people say about other Black people. They say that, you're trying to be white, and by your actions and the way that you talk and the way that you walk, that you're essentially betraying
Oh,
all of us Black people, and you're disrespecting all of us Black people, and um, you're not being true to yourself, and you're betraying us. And that is something that is very real, and that is one reason why I felt like I never really fit into
yeah.
Black society, and I was always kind of on this on the fence here, or in between two different worlds.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not white. I don't look white, so I'll never be white. But at the same time, by the way that I look and act, and the things that I do, and the things that I participate in, um, I don't fit into the Black world either. So it's really this in between place, where a lot of folks, like me, who are the only Black people in the organization, who are one of the only few Black people in their communities. It's a strange place that they find themselves in, and uh, it's really a matter of still being true to yourself, while still trying to find community and commonality, and other people that share your experience, when clearly there's very few people who do.
Yeah. I mean, I know that we both, have somewhere to be next. So, Mike, I guess my final inquiry, so to
Uh,
speak, something that I'm really interested in is, well, it's kind of twofold. It's what, in your opinion, is the most impactful thing to come out of our current time, right? With this dialogue that was spurred by this horrific event. What's, in your mind, what's the most critical piece of that? And then the second part of my question is, what is it that you want people to take away from our conversation?
Sure. So I think number one is, I think that there are a lot of people like Vernon. There's a lot of people like myself that are out there, who are the only people of color, the only Black men in the room.
Yeah.
And I saw a recent article on Medium that talked about, being the token Black friend. And, again, it was about wearing that armor. It was about, um, doing your best to fit in with your white friends, and being privileged to some of these, conversations that that people are having, that aren't necessarily overtly racist, um, uh, but at the same time, are not empowering other
Yeah.
people of color. But I think the biggest point is that there are lots of other people out there like me and Vernon, and especially, I would love for this message to reach other African American men and women, who may feel like they're the only Black person in the room, they're the only Black person in their community, they're the only Black person amongst their friends, to know that they're not alone. It's okay to start a conversation, and maybe discover some of the similarities between you, because hey,
Yeah.
we all didn't have the same experiences. We all don't share the same day-to-day experiences,
Yeah.
but at the same time, there's a lot more commonality, um, between us than you might think.
Yeah.
And this, go ahead.
I think we all at different times in our lives feel so much pressure to be something,
Hmm.
we all at some time in our lives don't feel good enough.
Yep.
But
Take
my
it till you
good
make it.
enough, my good
Hmm.
enough and my pressure is very different from yours. So
Hmm.
it's similar and it's different. And I need to know what that is, because on the
Hmm.
outside, I don't get it. So that's,
No.
I appreciate your invitation to have dialogue that is difficult or uncomfortable to initiate. Knowing that it's welcome
Hmm.
is really important.
I I I think the predominant, um, predominant message has been to listen
Yeah.
to other people of color, to listen to other Black people, and listen to what they have to say. And while know that that's very important, it's important for me to be able to share my story. But the purpose of me to share my story is to open up a dialogue, is to
Yeah.
open up a conversation. And I think that the very next step after listening is starting a conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
talking about this. So, and that's what I really want for all people, is
Yeah.
for all of us to be able to talk about it, because while yes, some of it is really scary and horrific, in the case of George Floyd, and being murdered, for simply being Black.
Yeah.
I think at the same time, there are much more similarities that we can come together around, and that we can build relationships around, that
Yeah.
are really core to who we are as
Yeah. I
human
mean,
beings.
I think so. At the very most fundamental um, level, humans want and crave connection,
Yes,
right?
yes,
At
yes.
the very, very deepest, most cellular, visceral level, we crave connection. And for me, walking away from this conversation, I feel like that's a new level for you and I, right? Of
Yeah.
understanding. So, I mean, I just appreciate your vulnerability so much in this conversation, and, talking about shame and where you were and where you've come. And so
Mm.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for opening up this conversation.
Yeah.
You were quick to listen and to begin to understand, but you took that next step, and you really opened up this conversation so that other
Yeah.
people might be able to benefit from this. So thank you so much for doing that, Allison.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I will see you very soon.
Yes,
And have the rest of your Sunday. I hope it's great.
I hope yours is as well too. Thank you so much,
All right,
Allison.
thanks.